You are what you eat. Well, in this case, your immune system turns out to be what you eat. These foods that we're about to talk about have been shown to directly impact immune function, leaving you vulnerable to infection if you're consuming these top 10 foods that destroy your immune system. You may not know this, but what you eat plays a significant role in how well your immune system functions. As a result, you can actively support your body's ability to ward off both acute and chronic conditions with each food you put in your mouth. However, depending on your food choices, you can also wreck your immune system just as easily. You've been able to witness this on a world stage with the current pandemic. It's so easy to see. It's very clear. Those who suffer with comorbidities have the worst outcomes when they get sick because their immune systems are weak. Think about it. Think about these comorbidities. Obesity, for instance. Is an individual who's obese eating healthy or not? Is someone who is suffering with type 2 diabetes eating healthy or not? You get the point. The food has a lot to do with it. Now, the top 10 foods that destroy your immune system, they should be avoided at all costs. Let's look at them. But what are these foods that are destroying your immune system? I bet you're thinking about sugar, thinking it's gotta be sugar because I know that that's the worst for you, but it's not. There's a food even worse than the excessive 125 pounds of sugar that the average American consumes every year. It's unhealthy fats in the way of oils, often referred to as both seed oils and vegetable oils. Now, at the root of the harmful biochemical reaction triggered by these seed oils is linoleic acid. Now you're probably thinking, well, linoleic acid, that's not horrible for you, is it? Well, let me break it down so that you can kind of understand where I'm coming from with this. Linoleic acid is the primary fatty acid found in polyunsaturated fatty acids. You hear these often referred to as PUFAs, and accounts for about 80% of the fatty acid composition of vegetable oils. These fats are high in omega-6 fatty acids. Now, omega-6 fats must be balanced with omega-3 fats in order not to be harmful, and this is really key here. But this is not the case for most people, especially in America. Research tells us this, that omega-6 to omega-3 ratios is very important and should be about 1-to-1 or even up to 4-to-1 in your body. But simply increasing your omega-3 intake isn't going to counteract the damage done by the excessive linoleic acid. So basically what I'm saying is that if you have excessive amounts of omega-6s in your body, you can't just take omega-3s to balance it out. Sure, it will make you feel better, but it doesn't stop the damage that's being done. You really need to minimize the omega-6 to prevent the damage from taking place. So why are these fats dangerous to your immune system? These fats become embedded in your cell membrane. They essentially become part of you and they stay with you for about 7 years, wreaking havoc on your health. Think of the trillions of cells in your body that are made up of fat, and your brain, which is made up of roughly 80% fat, being infiltrated by these unhealthy fats. It leads to a process known as lipid peroxidation in your body, which is the process which free radicals steal electrons from the lipids in the cell membranes, and it results in cell damage and also inflammation. So you could think of this inflammation attacking every cell in the body and even your brain. So if you ever notice you have brain fog or your thoughts aren't clear, maybe you're consuming too many omega-6 fats. During the lipid peroxidation cascade caused by the excessive amount of the omega-6 consumption, the PUFAs accumulate in the cell membrane, leading to this reaction called peroxidation, which we were just talking about. Because there's so many reactive oxygen species, it leads to the development of insulin resistance, and this happens all the way at a cellular level. Almost probably 2 years ago at this point, I did a video where I talked about how sugar is not the only thing that can cause insulin resistance. A lot of people think, oh, it's all about eating too many carbs or eating too much sugar. No, in fact, eating bad fats can lead to insulin resistance. This is why somebody who follows a ketogenic diet and they fail to eat healthy fats, they do the dirty keto as it's called, they can actually wind up having a lot of health problems. So here's a crazy example for you as to how it pertains to your immune health. So when very sick people who can't eat food are fed intravenously. It's a process called total parenteral nutrition, TPN, typically is what you'll hear it referred to as. Generally what is used is a product called intralipid, which is made out of soybean oil and sugar. I mean, can you imagine somebody goes to the hospital and they're fed a liquid soybean oil and sugar food basically? Well, basically here's what happened. So what the doctors did is they started playing with what they were feeding these patients. And what they discovered is that those who were getting this soybean oil formula, it increased their rate of getting acute respiratory distress syndrome. The fatality rate from acute respiratory distress syndrome is 30 to 60%. When they fed them the seed oils, it increased the rate of fatality by 7 times, okay? Pretty easy to see how much this impacted their immune system. One researcher explains that the animals typically develop cancer once their linoleic acid in their diet reaches 4 to 10% of their energy intake. And it's estimated that the average person is consuming way more than that. It's estimated the average American, for instance, is consuming around 8% of their calories from seed oils every day. So we're way over that threshold, and that means that the safe limits are far on the other side of that. And we have to really be careful with that. So what we have to remember is linoleic acid is considered an essential fat, okay? It's not the devil all the time. It's not necessary to eliminate it 100%. It's necessary to make sure that we decrease our consumption of it in a big way. Now, you might ask yourself, well, what kind of oils are we talking here? We're talking about all the typical oils that you find in cheap processed foods. Soybean oil, corn oil, canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, and also peanut oil. And so when you go out to a restaurant, fried foods certainly are going to be in that type of oil. You want to stay away from it. All types of fast food in general are going to be using lots of these oils. So make sure that you're cutting down on them. So let's take a look at the rest of our top 10 foods that are going to destroy your immune system. But before we do, did you know you can become a premium subscriber and get access to monthly meal plans, exclusive monthly Q&As with me, and downloads like our most recent guide, which teaches you how to naturally overcome respiratory illnesses when using a nebulizer at home. You can even sign up for a 1-year membership and get our amazing Wellness Warrior mug, which has the 5 credos to true health on the back of it. So go over to Dr. Z TV and become a member today. There's a link in the description, and it helps create content like this that's going to help you improve your health naturally. The next food group we have to talk about is highly refined carbs. Now, eating highly refined carbs like white bread, sugary baked goods too often is going to really harm your immune system. They're high glycemic foods, they spike your blood sugar, they spike your insulin level, and unfortunately, they lead to an increased production of free radicals and inflammatory proteins like C-reactive protein, which is an inflammatory marker I always look at in my patients, because if you have that high, well, then there's some concerns that we need to talk about. So the other thing we have to look at is that a diet rich in refined carbs actually can alter your gut bacteria, which in turn is going to negatively impact your immune system, right? We take probiotics in order to boost our immune system. Well, these refined carbs do the opposite. So we don't want to be doing that, because then we could even have gut health problems beyond a poor functioning immune system. Now, foods that contain certain additives are next on our list, because not only do we have to watch out for the processed carbs, but man, the additives in foods today are really out of control. Many food items, especially the really ultra processed ones, I mean, you're thinking all this stuff, on the shelves in the store that are these prepackaged foods, they contain additives to improve shelf life, texture, and taste. Now, think of the McDonald's hamburger for an example, right? It will virtually never mold. Do you think that their hamburgers are magic? Or do you think that it's just full of chemicals that stop it from doing that? You can make homemade bread, for instance, and it goes bad in days. But when you buy store-bought bread, it somehow magically lasts weeks. So these additives are going to negatively impact your immune system. The emulsifiers in the processed foods, I mean, they've been shown alone to actually alter your gut bacteria and harm your gut lining. And 80% of your immune system is located where? In your gastrointestinal system. So if you're consuming these foods and they're altering your gut bacteria, harming your gut lining, and inducing inflammation, your immune system's gonna have some problems. There's some studies out there that even show something called carrageenan, which is in a lot of health food, what would be considered health food, for instance. That actually has been shown to induce intestinal inflammation and inhibit immune response. If you actually start looking, you will see carrageenan in many of the different foods on the shelf, especially a lot of the health foods. For some reason, a lot of health food brands, they think that that's okay. So we gotta watch out for that. We also have to watch out for all the colorings, the flavorings, the stabilizers, all of them. And here's a good way to look at it. If you can't pronounce the name of the ingredient, there's a good chance that it's no good, right? It's probably some chemical and you don't want to eat it. Now let's talk about that nasty added sugar. Okay, that's the next top food on our top 10 foods that are going to destroy your immune system is the added sugar. You heard me say before, the average American consumes around 125 pounds of sugar every single year. And some people actually believe that that is an estimate that is low, and it's somewhere around 150 plus pounds of sugar per year. So added sugars, they're shown to increase the production of inflammatory proteins like tumor necrosis alpha, TNFA, and C-reactive protein. Also things like interleukin 6, and these all negatively will impact your immune system. Having high blood sugar may inhibit the response of neutrophils and the phagocytes, two of the types of immune cells that help protect against infection. High amounts of sugar has also been shown to harm the barrier of the gut lining. It also has been shown to cause gut bacteria imbalances, and this all, of course, as we mentioned already, causes a poor immune response. In 2012, there was a study on 562 older adults, and they found that those who had elevated blood sugar, so we're thinking some people who have insulin resistance or even low level of insulin resistance like pre-diabetes, they had lower immune responses and higher levels of inflammatory markers, C-reactive protein. Now, there's other studies that show too that high blood sugar levels impair your immune system, and especially those people who are suffering with diabetes. I mean, we know that their immune system's impaired, but even those who aren't. It's estimated that there's over 100 million people in the United States walking around with pre-diabetes and they don't even know it. That's pretty alarming. So think of all those people that are having a negative immune response and their immune system just can't do what it's supposed to do. It can't protect them. But let's look at our next food here on the top 10 foods that are going to destroy your immune system. And this is artificial sweeteners. Okay, this is one that is a little bit of a pet peeve of mine because I see so many people that go on a health journey and they start to avoid some of the ones that seem kind of obvious, like, maybe we should stay away from aspartame, right? That's pretty bad. However, there's a lot of quote unquote health products that are using things like sucralose that also is not good for your immune system. So certain artificial sweeteners have been linked to altering your gut bacteria composition. We're seeing this a lot, and we're seeing that when these different foods that I'm talking about are altering your immune function, it's starting in the gut in many cases. They have been shown to increase inflammation and also blunt your immune response. So if you're going to use something other than sugar, or even, something other than, let's say, a maple syrup, a more natural sweetener, a sweetener found in nature at the very least, if you're going to avoid using those, one of the things you can do is you can look to using things like stevia, xylitol, erythritol. Allulose is another one that's really popular right now and is a good option. And there's also the things like monk fruit, okay? But we don't want to go to the sucralose and the aspartame and these more chemically based sweeteners, okay? They've been shown to have negative impacts on our body. We have to watch out for those. And like I said, there's many people who start going towards the realm of eating healthy and they're trying to avoid sugar. Maybe they have insulin resistance, so they're trying to avoid sugar, and then they look to those chemical sweeteners. So we don't want to be doing that. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you really liked this one, then I think you'll really like this video next.